All right, so the question is, Doug, were the Greek gods real?
Somebody's been to too many Marvel movies. Those Greek gods are not real, or Norse gods, or all of them. So the answer is yes and no. Okay. I don't want to say that whatever the pagans taught about this goddess and that goddess and the Druids and the Neaids and so on, that every detail of that cosmology was accurate. I'm not saying that. But I also don't think it was simply a function of sheer superstition. And a good example, and there are places where the Bible indicates that. So in Acts 16, when Paul is followed around by the girl who told fortunes, and she was saying, "These are servants of the Most High," and Paul put up with it for a while, but then got annoyed by the demon and turned around and cast the demon out, which meant that the girl had lost her ability to tell fortunes. Well, that indicates that Luke believed, and Paul believed, that there was an actual demonic presence there, and that demonic presence equipped her to tell fortunes. And she had the power. It was just sheer fakery. She could have just continued to fake it. But there was a demonic power there. And in the Greek, it said she had the spirit of a python. Right? Python. Well, the oracle at Delphi was the Pythoness. So, according to Greek mythology, the god Apollo came down to Delphi and killed a giant python at Delphi. And there was a priestess established there, the oracle at Delphi, who was called after that the Pythoness. Okay, so this girl at Philippi had the spirit of a python. So she's clearly a devotee of the god Apollo. And so when you say real, if you ask me, if the question said, is the god Apollo real? I'd say yes, but define real. Is the god Apollo real in the way that the Greek gods were described by their poets in the fables? No. But was there something actually there? Was there an entity there that was worshipped under the figure of Apollo? And so Paul says explicitly in Corinthians, he says, those who sacrifice to idols are sacrificing to demons. He says an idol is nothing. It's just a bit of wood and stone. But those who sacrifice to idols are sacrificing to demons. So what the Greek pagans would call gods and goddesses, we would call demons, fallen angels, celestial beings who were wrongfully receiving the worship of fallen human beings.
So then, that's kind of interesting then, because you're saying that this Greek world had demonic powers behind it, but that is the classical world that were, classical education and whatnot. You got classical Christian education. How do you bring that world into a Christian education?
Yeah.
When you're saying, yeah, I believe there were demonic powers there.
Oh, it was demonic through and through. Yeah. So is the study of Latin a slippery slope into
exactly
into Satanism? No. But there's an important point here. I've taught various classes. I've taught classical lit at Logos before, for example. And one of the things I did, one of the texts I had was the kids would go through Ovid's Metamorphoses. He's a pagan poet, and there's some really gnarly stories in there. They're about the same level as the Book of Judges, but there's some pretty gnarly stories. And I let some of the students who wanted to skip some of them. But when we read through the whole thing, one of the things I would do is teach them what we're talking about now. This was a pagan, demonic civilization, and this is the world Christ was born into. This is what Christ came to save us from. And because many people, we've adjusted the baseline. 2,000 years of Christian influence, 2,000 years of Christian gospel preaching has made non-Christians think that we're, as a group, a whole lot better than we actually are. Right? They think that this is all basic human nature. And no, it's not basic. This is 2,000 years of gospel preaching. And you people who are rejecting the gospel are slowing the process down. But you're going to get the same thing reading the Old Testament. So in the Old Testament, empires had celestial powers behind them, right? So the prince, when Daniel is answered by the angel who comes, the angel arrives and he says, "I would have been here 3 weeks earlier, except I got in a fight with the prince of Persia." So there's Persia and there's a celestial entity behind it. There's Tyre and Sidon. There's a celestial entity behind it.
There's a Prince of Greece.
Prince of Greece.
Yeah.
The Beelzebub, who shows up in the New Testament, is Beelzebub. Beelzebub is the god of Ekron, the Lord of Flies. So all of these pagan civilizations had celestial, angelic, demonic powers behind them. So they were real things. There was a real spiritual reality there. And so Paul says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. So that's part of our task as Christians, is to understand that spiritual warfare involves dealing with these gods.
And the world that the gospel came up against.
Yeah.
So it would be like to read Greek literature outside of the understanding that you're giving would be like to read Greek literature as if, who's it, Percy Jackson, or what's the sort of modern fictionized version,
right?
Or it's a retelling that makes it super sweet and nice, rather than the nasty world it was.
If your kid's enrolled in a classical Christian school, and their classics instructor thinks, "Isn't Homer wonderful? Isn't Plato wonderful? Aren't these stories wonderful? Aren't we sophisticated?
Sweetness and light.
Sweetness and light. Run. Pull your kid out and run." So we study the classical world the way men at West Point study World War II, which means that they study what the Nazis did.
For the same reason that we read Nietzsche and
Yeah. Thanks for watching. I wanted to make sure to let you know that Season 4 of Man Rampant this year. For the next few weeks, we'll be posting clips on the Canon Press YouTube channel, but the full interviews are only available on Canon Plus. Check it out at mycanonplus.com/manrampant. And if you haven't joined up yet, you can get your first month for just 99 cents by using promo code MR99.